Your PhD focused on investigating OPEC surpluses and the like.
Wow, you have done your homework.
All right, I mean,
this guy's good. He's done a lot of homework.
With all the oil and gas finds in the continent, do you still have a sort of one eye and a sort of latent interest in what OPEC does, or how the continent, with all these new sort of oil and gas finds, how that might influence the OPEC story?
I often joke that I spent 3 years doing a PhD about oil and I learned nothing other than never do a PhD about oil prices, because it makes the foreign exchange market seem easy. So in a way it taught me a lot. So I'm always very skeptical of consensus views about oil, because during my PhD it was conventional. It was at the time of the second oil price crisis, and it was conventional thinking then that oil prices would go to $100 a barrel. I still have a stack of research this big where people were writing all this stuff, real top academics. And of course it spent the next 25 years going down. So that's one of the few big things I learned in my PhD. So I've become quite not a cynic, but quite a hardened market person when it comes to things related to oil. And I also believe, which is a huge issue for many African countries, that this thing known as the Dutch disease, where countries become too lazy on their commodity wealth, it's a problem for a lot of them.
Seeing in Africa, a number of countries are trying to establish sovereign wealth funds. I think there's probably about 6 at the moment, but it's projected to be about another 20 or so in the next sort of 8 to 9 years. So that's quite interesting.
That would be, if they're sincere, that of course would be a very sensible thing to do. It's what the Norwegians have done so successfully. So
absolutely.
If other African countries do it and do it properly, it's probably a pretty good thing to do.
Indeed. I mean, that redistribution or reorienting the wealth is really important.
You're saving for future generations whenever the oil may run out or whatever. And this is very close to what I did in my PhD. It was all about trying to optimize production today versus the future relative to the alternative returns, including investments. So I think the Norwegians are probably a role model in some ways for many countries.
Oh, fantastic.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.